Today, the State Duma of the Russian Federation stated that the Russian army should start sinking American ships and strike Europe with missiles, Oreshnik, in response to the seizure of the Mariner tanker under the Russian flag by American military forces in the Atlantic Ocean. This is the kind of hysteria that started among Russians after Trump made it clear that he was seriously aiming to destroy the Russian oil sector. First of all, Donald Trump approved the consideration in the Senate of a bill on new sanctions against Russia and all its allies and partners. At the same time, Donald Trump started a real hunt for Russia's oil business. In particular, American Senator Lindsey Graham stated that Trump has finally given the green light to consider the bill on sanctions against Russia. This is the very bill about 500 tariffs against countries that continue to trade with those countries. I should note that this bill has 85 votes in the United States Senate out of a possible 100. At the same time, new details have emerged about the Shadow Fleet tankers seized yesterday, which Russia was using to try to export oil from Venezuela. And here Trump stated directly that Russia must leave the region, but that's not all. Donald Trump and his advisors are planning to secure American dominance in Venezuela's oil industry for many years to come. And Trump told his aides that he believes this will help lower oil prices to his desired level of $50 per barrel. But that's for the American brand, while the Russian Urals will eventually fall below cost, which will ultimately destroy Russia's oil sector. There's definitely something to discuss. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave any comment under this episode, and subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, Donald Trump is clearly aiming to destroy Russia's oil sector. And if you think that the events around Venezuela won't affect Russia and its revenues at all, you're very much mistaken. Donald Trump is playing a much bigger game. And as the Wall Street Journal writes, Donald Trump and his advisors are planning to take Venezuela's oil industry under total American control for many years to come. And Trump stated that he believes he can bring the price of oil down to $50 per barrel. The plan being prepared in the White House involves establishing partial control over the state oil company Petróleos de Venezuela, including acquiring and selling most of the oil it produces. And, as it became known almost immediately after Maduro was overthrown, the White House began privately discussing with the new Venezuelan authorities the acquisition of control over oil supplies and the role of the United States in increasing oil production in the country. Since Venezuela has the largest oil reserves on the planet, the United States will thus be able to gain control over most of the reserves in the Western Hemisphere. If you take into account their own oil fields as well as those where American companies operate. This will also help push Russia and China out of Venezuela and lower prices for American consumers. An interesting statement was made today. The United States Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, explained that the United States will be selling oil produced in Venezuela for what he called an indefinite period of time. And here's the most interesting part. Chris Wright stated that the revenues from oil sales will first go to Washington and, under the control of the American government, will be redirected to the restoration of the Venezuelan economy, quoting Wright. Instead of blocking oil supplies, as is happening now, we will allow it to go to refineries in the United States and around the world to improve oil supplies. But these sales will be carried out by the United States government. The revenues from these operations will be credited to accounts controlled by the United States government and then returned to Venezuela in the interests of the Venezuelan people. And I should note here that many American refineries located on the Gulf Coast specialize in processing heavy, high-sulfur oil. That's the type of oil Venezuela produces, and they used to buy Venezuelan oil actively. But for many years, American sanctions of one kind or another have been in place against Venezuela, so American refineries have been forced to work with other types of oil. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made a statement, quote, "Our refineries on the Gulf Coast are the best in the world at processing this heavy oil, and there is a shortage of heavy oil in the world. That's why I think there will be huge demand and interest from the private sector if they are given such an opportunity. As a result, Donald Trump plans to bring the price of oil down to $50 per barrel, while right now the price of Brent is just a bit higher. At the same time, Russian Urals oil is trading at $50 per barrel, but that's the spot price. Russia is forced to offer huge discounts, officially up to $27 per barrel for buyers from India and China. And there have already been complaints that many oil producers from Russia are simply operating at a loss. If Brent drops by another $10, Russian oil will fall by just as much. And since there will be more supply on the market, Russia will be forced either to sell at a loss or to gradually leave the market. Trump is now targeting Russia's shadow fleet. Yesterday, the United States Coast Guard seized 2 tankers, including one under the Russian flag. And today, in the State Duma of the Russian Federation, they have already called for sinking American ships and even striking Europe with a hazel tree. There is a State Duma deputy in Russia named Alexei Zhuravlyov, who said today that the Russian army should start sinking American ships and strike Europe with Oreshnik missiles. In response to the seizure of the Mariner tankers by the American military, the deputy head of the Duma Defense Committee, this same Zhuravlyov, said, quote, "Attack with torpedoes, sink a couple of American Coast Guard boats, it's fine, they're guarding their coast thousands of kilometers away from it." I think the United States, which is in a kind of euphoria of impunity after the special operation in Venezuela, can only be stopped now by a slap on the nose like this. It sounds funny, but the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation has a slightly different opinion, and they simply made a statement like this. I'll quote further. Of course, they made it as ornate and beautiful as possible, but the point is that they can't do anything. So, the statement from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs goes like this. We express regret and concern over Washington's willingness to generate acute international crisis situations, including with regard to the already extremely strained disagreements of recent years in Russian-American relations. Well, that's the reaction. Meanwhile, a senator stated that United States President Donald Trump has given the green light to a bill on new sanctions against Russia. Here's the quote. I expect strong bipartisan support during the vote, hopefully as early as next week. This will be timely, since Ukraine is making concessions for the sake of peace, while Vladimir Putin is just talking and continues to kill innocent people. This bill will give President Trump tremendous leverage over countries like China, India, and Brazil. Brazil, to encourage them to stop buying cheap Russian oil, which is funding Putin's bloody slaughter against Ukraine. This is about an initiative also known as the Hellish and Crushing Sanctions, which involves the United States imposing a 500% tariff on imports from countries that buy Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other raw materials. Well, let's see what Donald Trump does next. I think he's specifically targeting oil. I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like if you found this episode interesting and informative. You can support the work of this YouTube channel financially with any donation using the QR code on your screen or through the links. In the description of this video it says support the channel Alexei Pechi. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.